What's going on, everybody? You think Florida's biker wars are over? Think again. Because before the Christmas lights went up in 2017, a bullet on a highway off-ramp turned the Sunshine State into a battlefield. This wasn't bar fights. This wasn't turf disputes. This was a war between a motorcycle empire and the small club crazy enough to challenge it. One beating lit the fuse. One promise of revenge fanned the flames. And one kill shot in broad daylight brought an entire chapter crashing down. This is the rise and fall of the 69ers in Florida, and the murder that destroyed them. Let's get into it. New tonight, a murder that changed everything. Just days before Christmas, on December 21st, 2017, Paul Anderson, president of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club's Pasco County chapter, was sitting at a red light in Odessa, Florida. He didn't know he was being hunted. Two masked riders pulled up beside his truck. Seconds later, Anderson was dead. The shooters thought they'd dealt a blow to their enemy. Instead, they had just signed their own death warrants. Both gunmen were members of the 69ers Motorcycle Club, a smaller, fast-rising rival trying to carve out space in a state the Outlaws had dominated for decades. But to understand why killing Anderson destroyed the 69ers, you have to go back to the beginning. The rise of the 69ers. The 69ers Motorcycle Club started in Brooklyn in the early 1960s. A gritty East Coast riding club that slowly evolved into a full-patch outlaw organization. They were smaller than the Outlaws, pagans, and Mongols, but what they lacked in size, they made up for in aggression. Their patch, the wolf, symbolized loyalty, unity, and ferocity. By the 2000s, they had expanded across the Northeast and into the South, New York, Jersey, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and finally, Florida. That move changed everything. Florida wasn't neutral territory. It was Outlaws country. And when the 69ers started showing colors in Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas counties, the Outlaws took it as a direct challenge. The Hillsborough chapter. Florida expansion was led by the Hillsborough chapter, based in Hillsborough County and run by Christopher Dirty Cosimano. His vice president, Sean Leonard, handled planning. His sergeant-at-arms, Eric Robinson, handled the violent work. Together, they turned the chapter into a rising threat, reckless, ambitious, and aggressive. They didn't just want to exist in Florida, they wanted to grow, push boundaries, take territory. And every mile they rode pushed the state closer to war, Palm Harbor, the beating that lit the fuse. April 18, 2017, a packed bike night event in Palm Harbor, two 69ers showed up casually, not knowing Outlaws were watching. The confrontation started with insults, then the Outlaws swarmed. Within seconds, the two 69ers were beaten to the ground by a dozen rivals. Their vests, their colors, were ripped from their backs. In biker culture, that's not a fight. That's humiliation, a public stripping of identity. For Cosimano, it was unforgivable. He swore revenge. He promised to kill two outlaws and take their vests back in blood. The first attempt. Months later, the 69ers targeted James Jimbo Costa, president of the Outlaws St. Petersburg chapter, a respected leader believed to have approved the Palm Harbor beating. As Costa rode across the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, the 69ers pulled alongside him and opened fire. Costa dodged, accelerated, and escaped. The hit failed. But after that moment, there was no going back. The Outlaws' St. Petersburg clubhouse burned weeks later in a suspicious fire. Investigators suspected the 69ers. No one talked. No one was arrested. Florida was officially in a biker war. December 21, 2017, the killing of Paul Anderson. Traffic slowed at the Highway 54 off-ramp in Odessa. Inside a truck waited Paul Anderson, president of the Outlaws Cross Bayou chapter, unarmed, unaware, tracked. Cosimano and fellow 69er Michael Pumpkin Mencher pulled up beside him. A third member, Alan Guinto, waited nearby as lookout. Cosimano got off his bike, walked to Anderson's window, tapped twice, and fired multiple rounds. Anderson died instantly. For the 69ers, it was revenge. For law enforcement, it was a gift. Within 12 hours, all three were arrested. Then came the twist that killed the Hillsborough chapter for good. Vice President Sean Leonard flipped. He became a federal informant, recorded phone calls, and testified in court. He exposed everything. The club hierarchy, the coded conversations, the planning of Anderson's murder, Cosimano's vow for revenge. His testimony, combined with surveillance and cell phone tracking, sealed the case. The fall of the 69ers. In 2019, Cosimano and Mencher, were convicted of murder in aid of racketeering and sentenced to life in federal prison. 3 other members pleaded guilty to supporting roles. With its leadership gone, the Killsborough chapter collapsed almost. Overnight, clubhouses emptied, members vanished. The 69ers disappeared from Florida completely by 2020. The Outlaws didn't have to retaliate. Law enforcement wiped their rivals off the map. The end, what started as a bar night beating, became a statewide war. What began as a vow for revenge ended in life sentences, and the club that tried to challenge an empire was erased in a single year. The 69ers proved they could kill an outlaw's president, but in doing so, they destroyed themselves. Florida didn't forget the fall, and the outlaw biker world never will.